I saw a basket at Split Coast Stampers, and they had some nice assembly instructions, but they do all their stuff by hand, and I like to do it by machine because anything I can do with my machine eliminates my need to use scissors, which hurt my hands with carpal tunnel and all. So I like this design, so I went ahead and made a template for it, and it looks like this. And I thought I'd show you how you can do something similar. You can make a design. My challenge will be for you to make a basket and decorate it how you would like to decorate it. The ones they had at Split Coast had flowers all over and ribbons and things. You could decorate it. It could be a centerpiece for a bouquet of flowers on a table. You could leave off the handle if you wanted. I just think it's kind of cute. So it's pretty simple to make too. So I'll show you how I did this. They give you the measurements and everything at Split Coast Stampers, but when you're doing it by hand, the technique is quite a bit different than if we want to make it with our machines, so we can do some shortcuts, not have to do all the measuring and everything. But I'm going to double click this square from Basic Shapes and resize it with the green lock icon and resize it to 10.5 inches wide by 12 inches tall and press enter. We'll try it again. 10.5 inches wide by 12 inches tall. And when I want to see what I'm doing when I'm designing, I like to take it off a contrast mat so that I can see the lines and have a transparent background. I choose the green, and that helps with designing. I also will start this up at the top at 0, 0, and enter. And then I can drag this little plus in the middle, which shows the center of that design, and drag it right over the center of my page. Right now I have my snapping set to 1/8 of an inch, and that will help me organize things a little bit better. The next thing I'm going to do is click this and hold Control-Shift-Click to make another and resize it to 10.5 by 4 inches and press enter. And I'm going to use Control-Shift and click to make another one exactly that size, and then click on Rotate 90 degrees at the bottom, the fourth icon from the left. Now I'm going to select all, Control-A, and type S to stack. Now I've got everything stacked. I'll move it back down here. And this is going to give me my score lines and my cut lines. I have one other thing to do, and that is to add some little side tabs. I'm going to select all of these score lines and send them to their own layer by clicking on the smaller of the two green plus icons at the bottom right corner of the screen. That put my score lines on their own layer. I'll just type score there so I know that those are score line. And I also change them to dashes unless I'm going to be using my engraving tool. I usually save that change until I'm ready to cut. So now you can see the score lines here, and these would be the cut lines. I need to make some tabs, so I could use this same square here, Control-Shift-Click, and resize that to, let's see, 0.75 inches wide by 4 inches tall, and enter. And I'm going to put it right on the edge here, Control-Shift-Click, and put it on the edge here. Now, I don't know if they're overlapping enough, we can see, but I'm going to hold a shift and click on each one of those, as well as the base of the design. So I have all three selected, and I'm going to weld and see if they will weld. Let's move it over and see. Oh, they sure did. Snapping really helps to get everything aligned perfectly and have it weld. So going back to my already done page, you'll see that there's the score lines and there's the background. And then I need to add these little perforations here. What's going to happen is these form the tabs that strengthen the sides of the basket. This will fold in, this will fold in, this as it folds up, same with this, and then these will be the other sides. And the tops of these this will fold back. When you look in the fold on the photo, easier to see the photo on contrast. Those little tabs fold over to make this brim around the top of the basket, along with these score lines here, right here. So this folds back to make that. So we'll go back to contrast, to green again, so we can see through it. I might as well change this. I can make this, maybe I'll make it pink. I should make this pink too, then though you can see it. Now, to make those little slits, it's easier to fold them and not have too much bulk if you take a little bit of the bulk out. There's several ways you can do it. I find the easiest way is to click on Basic Shapes and type in TR for triangle and get a right triangle. Double click. And I'm going to resize that triangle to 1/8 of an inch wide, 1/8, and 4 inches tall. Press enter. So I have right now the widest part at the bottom and the point at the top, but I want to be upside down. So I'm going to click the third icon from the left to turn that over. So the straight edge, because the right triangle has a slanted edge, is on the right, and the straight edge is on the left. So I want this to cut the piece out of this piece here. So I'm going to hold Control-Shift, click to make another copy, flip it over using mirror, and then use my left arrow to move it into place on the left side of those score lines. So now I have two of those. I'm going to hold Shift and click on the other and join them. Now I need to make another set for the bottom, so Control-Shift, click, and flip it using the third icon, and Control and scroll down. I can take these. It didn't flip it. There we go. Down to the bottom. Now I had it right. It's always good to be able to visualize what you're doing, and this is another example of how we can visualize things. I hide the score lines. Oh, look, I put them on the score line layer, so I'm going to hold Shift and click both and join them, send them to their own layer. Don't want them on the score layer. I'm going to hide the score layer. Now I've got one selection with these little triangles and another selection holding the Shift and holding the card. And now I'm going to subtract or do a Boolean join to subtract these triangles from the back card. So I'm going to click on the Boolean join, or Control-U, center icon on the bottom. A to B isn't what I want, but B to A is what I want. So you can see visually what's going to be cut out by using the Boolean join at this point. So I see I've got everything cut out of here like I want it to be. Now I'm going to apply and send my score lines to the top and open those up. And I think I'll give my thing some color again because I took away all the color. The only thing I need to do is get rid of excess score lines on this. I don't need the score line where I have these cut lines, so I can just delete those. What I'll do is hide this. What I want to do is get rid of the top and bottom half of this. Now I could just select it and drag this down, but then it moves the top and I don't want to do that. So instead I double click to add a node, and that gives me the option just to select and delete that portion of the line. Double click, select and delete. Click and then double click, select and delete. Select it, double click, select and delete. Now I have just the lines that I'm going to be needing. I can go to contrast so you can see them. So I have score lines everywhere where I need to have lines to do the folds, and then I have the card here, and this is ready to cut. So the only other thing I need to do is to create the pieces for the slats that you see here on the side here, and each one of these is an 11-inch by 1-inch wide strip of paper. So we want these on a different color, contrasting. What I used double-sided paper, which works nicely to show the design through underneath the slats and the back of the handle. And you can use just two different colors if you wanted, or contrasting designs, but you would have to use 2 sheets of paper. So I like having 1 sheet of paper that has different print on the back side. To create those slats, I click on basic shapes and I'll go back to the SQ for square, double click and add that, and resize 1 inch wide to 11 inches high and press enter. I'll send that to its own layer, and maybe I'll make that a burgundy color just to differentiate from what I have. I'm going to go into Edit, Duplicate, just regular duplicate, and I need 6 slats and only 1 row. I don't really need spacing here. I could keep the spacing if I want. It's up to you. And apply, and those are my slats. I only need 1 more piece, and that's the handle. I'm going to borrow a slat, Control Shift and drag, and just resize it to 1.25 inches wide by 12 inches long. Press enter, and there's the handle. So that is all I need for this design, and it makes a lovely basket. So I want to see all of your baskets for homework decorated. Put flowers on it, ribbons. You can use it for a vase or a dish to set your spring flowers in. So, any questions?
There are no questions. Anybody have a question for anything's handled so far, or any new topic? Now would be the time to ask. Nothing? Oh, wait, here we go. Homework due after this video is posted, I hope. Yes. You can wait till the video is posted to do your homework.
We'll allow that. Anybody else have questions about any other topic?
Terry just asked, how do you add a picture to the file?
I usually like to add a reference picture just because when I first did it, I included a picture from the site where I got the file just so that I could see what it's like. Let's see if I saved the picture. If I click on Pixel Trace, I can see, no, I didn't save it. I don't like to show other people's work during the webinar, but let's say I want to add, I'll just add this picture in, show you how I added it. Let's say I want this picture. I would open it, then click on, I would give it a threshold. Well, this one has an alpha channel, meaning it's a PNG with no background. I can just click that and texturize path and apply, and it comes in. But if you have a picture that doesn't have an alpha channel, you would, again, click on Pixel Trace, and this one doesn't have an alpha channel. So I'll click open, and if I click on alpha channel and try to apply it, it won't work because there's no alpha channel. So I click on Pixel Trace, make that 255 and texturize path, apply changes, and it imports like this. Now I can get rid of, well, I can't get rid of those white lines. I might be able to get rid of the white lines. Let's see. If I take this one, open, and maybe take it in at 250 with texturized path, let's see what happens there. I'll try it a little less because sometimes, yeah, you can start getting rid of those outside lines by just, but then you start adding some problems up here. So what I do is change the threshold until I get everything that I want. I don't worry about this in here because I can click on blackout and apply, but it's going to fill in the whole thing. Oh, there we go. This would be good enough. I'll import that and finish tracing. So that if I split this, is this the one I just did? No, this is the one I just did. So you can see that there's lines. If I use split here, then I can separate those lines out. So there we have don't have the black lines around it. So sometimes you can do that. But all you have to do is pixel trace. This was my first version. Again, texturize path if you want to see the picture. If you don't click texturize, it'll just come in black like this is over here. And you have to raise the threshold of 255 will bring the entire thing in and import. So now you see all my versions.
Okay, thank you. Beverly had a question of what size paper do you cut on? You are designing for 12-inch paper, but that won't cut, at least it doesn't for me.
Depends on which cutter you're using. I cut on 12 by 12 paper. Now let's look at this. It actually measures 12 by 12, the whole design does. If you're cutting to a silhouette from Make the Cut, Silhouette only cuts 11.8 inches wide. And if I were cutting this on the Silhouette, I would take this line and click it and make sure it's a line. Right click, I guess it's a line. And use my right arrow and just move it over a little bit. I only need 2/10 of an inch. And I would take this unnecessary line and move it over. And again, this might not be a line. I guess it is. Hold the control, it'll move faster. So that now, when I select my design, if it's 11.6 inches wide, I can now cut this on my Silhouette, my Cameo, that handles only 11.8 inches wide. Now, if I have another cutter, I do have a cutter that only cuts 11.5 inches wide. If I want to use that cutter, what I will do is just resize the whole thing. From the website, I think the Split Coast Stampers, theirs wasn't this big. So what you do is just select it all, and let's say that I want to make this so that this, well, the width, so that the width is only 11.5 inches of this here. So I'd have to move this if I'm going to do the width. Make them all, the widest thing will be on top, and I'll kind of zoom it out. And you know, they made their slats 1 inch wide, even though their basket was smaller. So you wouldn't have to resize it, but let's say you wanted to resize it all proportionally. You would select it all, and you could say, I'm going to lock, put the lock on, and I'm going to type in 11.5 as the width and enter. And now it will work in my other cutter that has that limitation. I can move this back. Now they're all resized. If I needed it to be smaller, again, I could just drag this corner up and it'll still be resized proportionally, and you can make it as big or as small as you want. My cutters don't have any problem cutting the full 12-inch width. If you are cutting, sometimes this edge over here that's right at the 12 inches might want to cut off the paper, and if that's the case, you always could just delete these outside lines. Just left click and delete, so that the edge of the paper will serve as your outside line, and then everything else would just cut up to the line, and that'll work too. I like to keep my designs saved with all the lines intact in case I want to export them or in case I want to resize for any reason. So I will leave those lines in until I need them to be different. That way I know it's usable.
Okay, she said she's using the Zing Air. I'm trying to figure out. She says,
I don't know why the Zing wouldn't work. I didn't cut this on the Zing. I cut this on my Pazzles View, and it cut fine. And sometimes when things are right on the line, you have to make sure that they are lined up by the XY thing here, because I think it's right at X, but see, I have this not at 0. So if it's out of bounds, it won't cut. So you do sometimes have to make sure that everything is lined up the way it should be.
yeah, and you said that she also said it hooked on the, it always wants to get hooked on the lid of the cutter at the upper edge. Beverly, what mat are you using, and is it curled at all? And do you have any anything to supporting the mat as it goes in and out? Because the Zing Air can cut up to Was it 14 inches or 13?
Yes,
14 inches.
we can cut 14 inches wide on the Zing. So the length shouldn't be a problem, but yeah, if it's catching up on the top part, I suspect that I use just a book sometimes is all I need to put behind my cutter and in front of my cutter and make sure it's not hanging over the edge of a table, because if it does, then you get a bulge up the middle somewhere, and that can catch the edges. So you want to make sure everything's perfectly flat.
Yeah, she says it's not curled. The mat's not curled. It's a 12-inch mat. You really shouldn't be catching. So.
Well, it's not that that doesn't have to be curled to do that. It'll bulge if it's not laying flat.
She says she has the support on both sides, and
Yeah.
Liz did make a good reminder that it will cut 14 inches wide, but only in knife mode. It won't cut 14 inches wide in what you get.
But I don't have trouble. I've never had trouble. I don't have a Zing Air, but I have a Zing. I've never had trouble cutting a 12-inch project. Not, and that's all I use basically is 12-inch paper. It's pretty common for me to maximize my paper. I want to make my projects as big as I can, so I mostly will fill my 12-inch area.
All right. She says thank you. Any other questions for Julie or for what's been covered or even things that haven't been covered? Thank you, Julie, for that demonstration. And once I post the webinar, we're going to want to see those homework pictures. We'll give you a day or two after the video is posted.
Yeah, at least.
Till the next webinar. All right. I don't see any questions. Does anybody have Oh, Beverly just asked a question. Before I get to her question, if anybody has a microphone that would like to be unmuted to ask a question or make a comment while we're recording, go ahead and click on the icon that looks like a raised hand. So Beverly asks, in node mode, even if auto smooth is unchecked, it seems to come back. Is there something I don't know about this? Do you mean that auto smooth seems to come back? Because it really shouldn't. Let me go ahead and switch over to mine. So if I'm, let's take something that has curves in it. If I'm in node mode, if I just right click, node mode. If I just right click, this should be set to, to whatever the last time you had it set. If you're editing the node itself and right click here, there's auto smoothing here as well, but it should not. This should not check, and that would make a difference when you're doing the changing things, right? If it's checked, if it's not, that's kind of hard to explain, but it shouldn't just switch on automatically. Now there's the auto. You're not confusing that with auto simplify, right? You're definitely talking about the. Let's see. Or wants to turn off. Well, it should, but an easy thing to do is just every time you go into, if you're having a problem, every time you go into node, the edit paths level, just right click outside of design and see if it's set or not set. As soon as you click it, it's going to set it again. So now if I change one line, it's going to change the line segments adjacent to it. But it really shouldn't just turn itself on and off. So I'd be curious on that. And I don't think it is saved. Like there's certain settings that are saved, like snap position and stuff is saved with the project. So when you bring it back in, if you bring in somebody else's project, or maybe that's in Pop-Up Card Studio, I have to look. So there's some things that may come in when you bring in somebody else's project, but it really should should stay on whatever you set it at.
Make sure you don't have snapping on.
Yeah, and then there's, well, yeah, but that won't turn this on and off. But if what you're talking about is, she said she may be confusing it with the auto simplify here. There's different places where that will take effect. This sort of automatically auto simplifies every design, but if you have, or every function, if you have that turned off, then if I if I do a I'm trying to think what are some of the functions that I'll, if I'm doing, let's see, let me just take both of these. I'm trying to remember now what are some of the functions that some of the, I know what'll work. If you're doing something like a shadow, there's I can tell it to do it only when I do this particular function, and that'll do it locally for this function. It won't change this global. This is more of a global, but there are some things that have it within their own function. But it should be it should stay pretty consistent there. All right. I'm sorry. Was there any other questions? I don't think I missed any there. And I didn't see any hands yet. All right. I don't see any other questions, so thank you, Julie. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then we'll still be on to chat if anybody comes up with a question. So give me a second.